The designer suit was so white it hurt to look at, pristine as fresh snow, until Dean Patricia Morrison swept Emma's hospital papers off the desk like garbage, her diamond rings catching the light as she sneered, "You people think one little act of charity makes you special. Welcome back, family. If you love great stories, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload." Let's jump right into today's story. The scholarship folder hit the trash can with a thud that seemed to echo through Dean Patricia Morrison's corner office, bouncing once against the metal rim before settling among crumpled papers and an empty Starbucks cup. Emma Bradley stood frozen, her 19-year-old body rigid with disbelief, watching the thick manila envelope, the one that had arrived 2 years ago with a presidential seal embossed on the cover letter, disappear into waste. "Please," Emma heard herself whisper, the word scraping past the knot in her throat. "Dean Morrison, if you would just look at the documentation." Documentation? The dean's laugh was sharp, brittle. She stood behind her mahogany desk in that immaculate white Chanel suit, arms crossed over her chest, her blonde bob not moving despite the aggressive shake of her head. Behind her, floor-to-ceiling windows framed the pristine quad of Riverside University, where students moved like ants between buildings, oblivious to the execution happening 3 floors above them. "You mean these?" Morrison's manicured hand swept across the desk again, sending the papers from Metropolitan General Hospital scattering to the floor. Patient transfer records. Emergency room intake forms. A doctor's statement on official letterhead, complete with a raised seal and signature. All of it now crumpled at Emma's feet like trash. "I had to save her life." Emma's voice cracked. She could still smell the metallic tang of blood, still feel the woman's weak pulse beneath her fingers. She was bleeding out on the sidewalk. Everyone just walked past her. I couldn't just leave her there." "You had an exam, Miss Bradley." Morrison's voice turned to ice. Each word precisely articulated, dripping with contempt. "Your nursing 401 final. Worth 40% of your grade. You missed it to play hero, and now you want special treatment. The university policy states that documented medical emergencies are grounds for consideration." Consideration. Morrison leaned forward, palms flat on the desk, her face a mask of barely contained disgust. "Not a guarantee. And certainly not for students who can't follow simple instructions. You were told the exam policy at the beginning of the semester. No makeups. No exceptions." Emma's hands trembled at her sides. She'd been standing in this office for 12 minutes now, she'd counted every one of them on the antique clock behind Morrison's head, and not once had the dean invited her to sit in either of the leather chairs positioned in front of the desk. The message was clear: this wasn't a meeting. It was a sentencing. "I was told to come here to discuss my appeal," Emma said, forcing strength into her voice even as her legs felt like water. The department chair said. Professor Chen was being polite. Morrison straightened, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her suit jacket. "Let me be clear. Your appeal is denied. Your grade stands as an F. And due to the presidential scholarship requirements mandating a minimum 3.5 GPA, which you can no longer maintain." She paused, her thin lips curling into something that might have been a smile on a kinder face. "Your scholarship is hereby terminated, effective immediately." The words hit Emma like physical blows. Her vision tunneled, the edges of the office going dark and fuzzy. Terminated. The scholarship that paid her full tuition, her room and board, her books. The scholarship she'd earned with a 4.0 GPA from her struggling inner-city high school, with 3 jobs and a letter of recommendation from the hospital where her mother had died. The scholarship that was supposed to change everything. Furthermore, Morrison continued, her tone almost conversational now, as if she were discussing the weather, without scholarship funding, your account shows an outstanding balance of $47,000 for this year alone. University policy requires settlement of accounts before registration for next semester. She tilted her head, blonde hair catching the afternoon sun. I assume you have that amount readily available. Emma couldn't breathe. $47,000. She barely had $47. Her checking account had $16.32, she'd checked it that morning before the world fell apart. I can apply for loans, Emma managed. Financial aid, I can. The deadline for financial aid applications was in March, Miss Bradley. It's now November. Morrison glanced at her Apple Watch with theatrical boredom. And frankly, given your academic standing, I doubt any private lender would take the risk. This can't be happening. Emma's mind raced, grasping for something, anything. 72 hours ago, she'd been on track for early acceptance to the nursing graduate program. She'd been planning her mother's memorial scholarship in her name. She'd been winning. And then she'd seen the woman on the sidewalk. 72 hours earlier. Emma's alarm shrieked at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before her usual wake-up time, because today wasn't usual. Today was the nursing 401 final, and she'd given herself extra time to review her notes one last time over coffee she'd brew in the single-cup maker salvaged from her dorm's common room trash pile. The November cold bit through the thin walls of her apartment, a basement efficiency she'd moved into sophomore year when even the cheapest dorm became unaffordable. She rolled out of bed, her feet hitting frigid linoleum, and grabbed the space heater's power cord. Nothing. She jiggled it. Still nothing. Perfect. Third time it had died this month. 20 minutes later, showered in lukewarm water and dressed in her scrubs, clean but faded from too many wash cycles, Emma stood at her kitchen counter, which was really just a 2-foot strip of laminate bolted to the wall. Her nursing 401 binder lay open, pages covered in color-coded notes. Pharmacology. Acute care procedures. Emergency response protocols. She could recite them in her sleep. Had recited them in her sleep, actually, according to her roommate Jasmine, until Jasmine had moved out last month when her boyfriend got an apartment with heat. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from Professor Chen, "Good luck today, Emma. You've worked hard. You've got this." She smiled, warmth spreading through her chest despite the cold apartment. Chen had been her advisor since freshman year, had written her recommendation for the graduate program, had stayed late countless times to help her practice 4 insertions on the simulation dummies until Emma's technique was flawless. "Thank you, Professor. See you at 9 a.m. The bus ride to campus took 40 minutes, which Emma filled with last-minute review, her binder balanced on her lap, highlighter tucked behind her ear. Around her, the city woke up, shop owners rolling up metal gates, construction workers gulping coffee from food trucks, a homeless man asking for change at the bus shelter where Emma waited for her transfer. She gave him her granola bar. She only had 2, had packed them last night as exam fuel, but something about the way he'd said, "God bless you, sweetheart," made her think of her mother. Veronica Bradley had died 3 years ago from complications of untreated diabetes. Untreated because she couldn't afford insulin and regular doctor visits on a home health aide salary. Untreated because she'd prioritized Emma's SAT prep course and college application fees over her own prescriptions. Untreated until it was too late, until she'd collapsed at work and been rushed to Metropolitan General, where 16-year-old Emma had held her hand in the ICU and made a promise. "I'm going to be a nurse, Mama. I'm going to help people like you. People who fall through the cracks. I promise." Her mother had squeezed her hand with what little strength remained. "You're going to change the world, baby girl." Emma blinked hard, pulling herself back to the present. The bus hissed to a stop at Campus Square, 3 blocks from the nursing building. 8:17 a.m. Plenty of time. She swung her backpack over her shoulder and started walking, her breath forming clouds in the crisp morning air. Students streamed past her, some frantic, some leisurely, some still bleary-eyed from whatever had kept them up the night before. Finals week had transformed the campus into a pressure cooker of stress and caffeine addiction. 2 blocks. Her mind ran through medication dosages. Morphine sulfate, 2.5 to 15 milligrams for every 4 hours as needed for pain. 1 block. Cardiac arrest protocols. Check responsiveness. Call for help. Begin CPR at 100 to 120 compressions per minute. And then she saw the woman. At first, Emma almost didn't notice her. The woman was just another figure on the crowded sidewalk, another body moving through the morning rush. But something made Emma's gaze snag, the awkward angle of the woman's posture, the way she'd stopped moving while everyone else flowed around her like water around a stone. Then the woman stumbled. Her hand shot out, grasping at a parking meter for support, and that's when Emma saw it, the dark stain spreading across the woman's cream-colored coat. Blood. Too much blood. Emma's nursing training kicked in before conscious thought could catch up. She was moving, her backpack sliding from her shoulder and hitting the pavement as she ran. 20 feet. 15. The woman's knees buckled. "Ma'am." Emma reached her just as she started to collapse, catching her under the arms, easing her down to the cold concrete. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The woman's eyes fluttered open, pale blue, unfocused, pupils dilated with shock or pain or both. She was older, maybe late 50s, with silver blonde hair styled in an elegant cut that probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent. Her coat was cashmere. Real cashmere, not the department store kind. And underneath it, her silk blouse was soaked crimson. "Bleeding," the woman whispered, her voice thin and thready. Can't stop." Emma's hands were already moving, unzipping the coat, finding the source. Left side, just below the ribs. A wound, deep and ragged, like she'd fallen on something sharp. Or been stabbed. Blood pulsed with each heartbeat, too fast, too much. "Someone call 911. Emma shouted to the crowd. At least 30 people stood within earshot, a rough circle of onlookers, but no one moved. They stared. They whispered. They held up their phones, recording, probably, because that's what people did now. Now. Call 911. A young man in a Georgetown hoodie finally pulled out his phone, fingers shaking as he dialed. Emma yanked off her jacket and pressed it against the wound, applying firm, steady pressure. The woman gasped, her face going whiter, and Emma adjusted her position, kneeling in the woman's blood, in the grime of the city sidewalk, uncaring. "Stay with me," Emma said, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "What's your name?" "Eleanor." Barely a whisper. "Eleanor, I'm Emma. I'm a nursing student. You're going to be okay, but I need you to stay awake. Can you do that for me?" Emma checked her watch with her free hand. 8:31 a.m. The ambulance would take at least 5 minutes, maybe longer in morning traffic. "Keep your eyes open, Eleanor. Look at me." Those blue eyes found hers, clinging to consciousness like a drowning person to driftwood. "Do you have any medical conditions? Allergies?" Emma ran through her assessment training. The woman's pulse was rapid and weak under Emma's fingers where she pressed against her neck. Respirations shallow. Skin cold and clammy. Classic signs of hypovolemic shock. Heart, medication. Eleanor's words slurred. Purse. Emma spotted the leather handbag a few feet away, flung open, contents scattered. She grabbed it one-handed, rifling through with her free hand while maintaining pressure on the wound. Wallet. Keys. Sunglasses. There, a pill bottle. She scanned the label. Blood thinners. Damn. That explained why the bleeding wouldn't stop. "The ambulance is coming," the Georgetown kid called out. They said 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Emma looked down at her jacket, already soaked through. 5 minutes might be too long. "I need something else to apply pressure," Emma said to the crowd. "A shirt, a towel, anything clean." A woman in running gear hesitated, then pulled off her zip-up hoodie and handed it over. Emma added it to the compress, pressing harder. Eleanor moaned, her eyes rolling back. No, no, no. Eleanor, stay with me. Emma raised her voice, sharp and commanding. Tell me about your family. Do you have kids? 2. Eleanor's eyes flickered open again. Sons, grown. That's good. What are their names? Thomas, and. Her voice faded. Eleanor. Emma felt for her pulse again. Still there, but weaker. Come on, stay with me. Your sons need you. What's the other one's name? But Eleanor's eyes had closed. Emma heard the siren then, distant but growing closer. She checked her watch again. 8:38 a.m. Her exam started in 22 minutes. The nursing building was 1 block north. She could still make it if the paramedics got here in the next 3 minutes, if they took over quickly, if she ran. Eleanor's breathing changed, becoming more labored. Emma pressed harder on the wound, feeling the warm blood seeping through both layers now. She couldn't leave. This woman would die if she left. The paramedics weren't here yet, and even 3 minutes of reduced pressure could be the difference between life and death for someone on blood thinners with this much blood loss. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Probably Jasmine, texting good luck. Emma ignored it. The ambulance screamed around the corner, lights flashing, and Emma had never been so relieved to see those red and white strobes in her life. It screeched to a stop, and 2 paramedics jumped out, one already pulling equipment from the back. 19-year-old nursing student, trauma to left lower quadrant, approximately 10 minutes of bleeding, Emma rattled off as they approached, falling into the clinical language of emergency medicine. She's on blood thinners, warfarin, 5 mg daily. Pulse is thready, respirations shallow, showing signs of hypovolemic shock. I've been maintaining direct pressure but the bleeding hasn't stopped. The older paramedic, a black woman with kind eyes and Jenkins on her name badge, nodded approvingly. Good work. We've got it from here. Emma moved aside, her hands sticky with blood, her scrubs and jeans soaked. She watched as they worked, 4-line, oxygen mask, pressure bandage, backboard. Efficient. Professional. Beautiful to watch, really, the way they moved in synchronized coordination. You likely saved her life, Han, Jenkins said as they loaded Eleanor onto the stretcher. Another few minutes and she might not have made it. You did good. Emma managed a shaky smile. I'm just glad I was here. As the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing again, Emma stood alone on the sidewalk. The crowd had already dispersed, bored now that the show was over. Only the Georgetown kid remained, holding out her backpack. You dropped this, he said. That was really cool, what you did. Thanks. Emma took the backpack, her hands leaving bloody smears on the straps. Then she looked at her watch. 8:52 a.m. The exam had started 7 minutes ago. Professor Chen's syllabus had been crystal clear, exams begin promptly at the scheduled time. No admittance after start time. No exceptions. Emma ran anyway, her shoes squelching with blood, her breath coming in gasps. She ran through campus, past startled students, up the stairs of the nursing building, down the hallway to room 403. The door was closed. Through the small window, she could see rows of bent heads, pencils moving across exam papers. She tried the handle. Locked. Emma knocked, softly at first, then harder. Professor Chen looked up from her desk at the front of the room, saw Emma's face in the window, and her expression shifted from surprise to something like pain. She shook her head slowly. Mouthed the word sorry. Then she looked back down at her papers. Emma stood there for a full minute, her forehead pressed against the cold door, feeling her entire future crumbling. The scholarship required a 3.5 GPA. Nursing 401 was 4 credits. An F would drop her to 3.2, maybe lower depending on her other finals. She looked down at her blood-soaked clothes, at her shaking hands, and felt something crack inside her chest. She'd saved a woman's life. And it had just cost her everything. Emma sat in the student health center bathroom for 40 minutes, scrubbing blood from under her fingernails with the harsh industrial soap that smelled like fake pine and chemicals. The water in the sink ran pink, then pale pink, then finally clear, but she kept washing. Kept scrubbing. As if she could wash away the last hour along with Eleanor's blood. Her phone had been buzzing non-stop. She finally pulled it from her pocket, careful not to get it wet, and scrolled through the notifications with pruned fingers. Jasmine, good luck, babe. You're going to kill it. Jasmine, wait, why aren't you answering? Jasmine, are you okay? Professor Chen, Emma, please come see me during office hours today. We need to talk about this morning. An unknown number, this is Metropolitan General Hospital. We're calling regarding the patient you assisted this morning. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. And 3 missed calls from the University Financial Aid Office. That last one made her stomach clench. They never called unless something was wrong. Emma dried her hands on the rough paper towels and stared at her reflection in the scratched mirror. Her cornrows were still neat, she'd gotten them done 2 days ago, spending money she probably shouldn't have but needing to look professional for the exam. Her face was drawn, eyes red-rimmed but dry. She'd cried herself out in the first 10 minutes, sitting in a locked stall, trying to muffle the sounds against her fist. Now she just felt hollow. The bathroom door swung open, and a petite Asian girl walked in, stopping short when she saw Emma. Oh my God, are you okay? Is that blood? Emma looked down. Her scrubs were ruined, dark stains covering the front. She'd forgotten she was still wearing them. I'm fine. It's not mine. Do you need me to call someone? Campus security or? I'm fine, Emma repeated, more firmly this time. She grabbed her backpack and pushed past the girl, out into the bright fluorescent hallway of the health center. The walk back to her apartment took an hour because she missed the first bus and had to wait 30 minutes for the next one. She spent the time staring at her phone, reading and rereading Professor Chen's message, trying to decode what "we need to talk" actually meant. Did she have a chance? Could she retake the exam? Professor Chen had always been kind to her, had gone out of her way to mentor Emma and to make sure she had the resources she needed to succeed. Surely she would understand that this was a genuine emergency. A life-or-death situation. Not some hangover or overslept alarm. By the time Emma reached her apartment, she'd almost convinced herself it would be okay. She stripped off her ruined scrubs, threw them in the trash, they were beyond saving, and stood under the shower until the hot water ran out, which took about 6 minutes because her building's water heater was ancient and inadequate. Then she dressed in clean jeans and her Howard University sweatshirt, a gift from her mother the Christmas before she died. Professor Chen's office hours were 2 to 4 p.m. Emma checked the time, 1:47. Close enough. The nursing building felt different now, hostile somehow, as Emma climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor faculty offices. Students passed her in clusters, discussing exams and holiday plans, their voices bright with the relief of semester's end. Nobody looked at her. Nobody knew that her world had ended this morning on a blood-stained sidewalk. Professor Chen's door was open. She sat at her desk, reading glasses perched on her nose, grading papers with a red pen. She looked up when Emma knocked on the doorframe, and her face softened with sympathy. Emma. Come in, please. Close the door. Emma did, then stood awkwardly in front of the desk, unsure whether to sit in the offered chair. Her legs felt weak, but sitting felt presumptuous somehow, like she was assuming this would be a long conversation instead of a quick dismissal. Sit down, honey, Professor Chen said gently, and Emma sank into the chair, relief flooding through her. Professor, I'm so sorry about this morning. I know the policy, I know what the syllabus said, but there was a woman, she was bleeding, the words tumbled out in a rush, tripping over themselves. I'm a nursing student. I couldn't just walk past her. She would have died. The paramedic said I saved her life. Professor Chen held up a hand, stopping Emma's desperate explanation. I know. The hospital called me. They wanted to verify that you were enrolled here, that you'd had the training to provide the care you did. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Emma, what you did this morning was extraordinary. It was brave and selfless, and it embodied everything we try to teach in this program about patient care and moral responsibility. Emma's heart leaped. So I can retake the exam? The professor's face fell, and Emma knew the answer before she spoke. I submitted a formal request to the dean for an exception to the makeup exam policy. I included the hospital's statement, the paramedic report, everything. Professor Chen removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes, suddenly looking much older than her 40-something years. Dean Morrison denied it an hour ago. The hollow feeling in Emma's chest expanded, consuming everything. But it's documented. It's a legitimate medical emergency. The policy says documented emergencies may be considered for accommodations. Not that they will be granted. Professor Chen's voice was tight with barely suppressed anger. Morrison's position is that the emergency didn't involve you directly, that you made a choice to intervene, and that choices have consequences. So I just fail. That's it. Emma's voice cracked. My scholarship. I know. Professor Chen reached across the desk, squeezing Emma's hand. Her palm was warm, maternal. I'm so sorry, Emma. I've been fighting this all day, but Morrison won't budge. The professor stopped, seeming to reconsider her words. She's very rigid about policy enforcement. Rigid. That was a polite way of saying something else, Emma thought. Something neither of them could say out loud in this office. There has to be something I can do, Emma whispered. An appeal process. Something. Professor Chen squeezed her hand again before releasing it. There is. You can file a formal academic appeal with the dean's office. But Emma. She paused, her dark eyes full of warning. I need you to understand that Dean Morrison doesn't lose appeals. She's been here for 12 years, and in that time, I don't know of a single overturned decision. Emma stood, her legs somehow holding her weight despite feeling like rubber. I have to try. I know you do. Professor Chen stood too, walking around the desk to pull Emma into a brief, fierce hug. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. What you did today, saving that woman's life, that's what being a nurse means. Don't let anyone make you regret that choice. But as Emma walked out of the building into the cold November afternoon, regret was exactly what she felt. The appeal form was 7 pages long. Emma sat at her kitchen table, really just a folding card table she'd bought at Goodwill for $12, filling out each section with meticulous care. Name. Student ID number. Course information. Nature of appeal. Supporting documentation. For the last section, she had 3 pieces of paper, a statement from Metropolitan General Hospital confirming her assistance with an emergency patient, a note from paramedic Jenkins describing the severity of the situation, and a letter from Professor Chen supporting her character and academic record. It wasn't enough. Emma knew it wasn't enough. But it was all she had. She submitted the appeal online at 11:47 p.m., then sat staring at her laptop screen, watching the confirmation message blink. Your appeal has been received and will be reviewed within 5 to 7 business days. 5 to 7 business days. Thanksgiving break started in 3 days. The appeal wouldn't even be looked at until December. Emma closed her laptop and climbed into bed, still wearing her sweatshirt because the space heater had finally died completely and her landlord wasn't answering calls. She pulled her blankets, 2 comforters layered together, up to her chin and stared at the water-stained ceiling. Sleep didn't come. Instead, Her mind replayed the morning on an endless loop. Eleanor's pale face. The blood. The weight of the decision in that split second when Emma had seen her and known she had a choice, keep walking to her exam, or stop and help. She'd made the right choice. She knew she had. Her mother would have been proud. But her mother was dead, and Emma was about to lose everything she'd worked for, and right now, in this cold apartment in the middle of the night, the right choice felt like the stupidest thing she'd ever done. Her phone lit up on the nightstand. 2:17 a.m. A text from an unknown number. Emma Bradley. This is Victor Richardson. You saved my wife's life today. I'd like to speak with you. Please call me at this number at your earliest convenience. Emma stared at the message, reading it 3 times before her exhausted brain could process it. Victor Richardson. The name meant nothing to her. She Googled it with shaking fingers. The results made her sit up straight in bed. Victor Richardson. Founder and CEO of Richardson Technologies. Net worth, $8.2 billion. Philanthropist. Tech innovator. One of the richest men in America. And Eleanor Richardson was his wife. Emma scrolled through images, Victor at charity galas, at tech conferences, on the cover of Forbes magazine. And there, in several photos, was Eleanor. The same elegant woman, the same silver blonde hair, smiling beside her billionaire husband at some fundraiser or another. Emma had saved a billionaire's wife. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd sacrificed everything to save a woman who probably spent more on her shoes than Emma's mother had earned in a year. A woman who would never have to worry about choosing between insulin and rent, who'd never had to watch a parent die because healthcare was a luxury they couldn't afford. Emma should have felt bitter. Instead, she just felt tired. She typed out a response, Mr. Richardson, I'm glad your wife is okay. I'm dealing with some personal matters right now but I'll reach out when I can. Emma. She hit send before she could overthink it, then turned off her phone and burrowed back under her blankets. This time, mercifully, she slept. The email from Dean Morrison's office arrived 3 days later, one day before Thanksgiving, at 4:47 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. Emma was packing a small bag. She'd been invited to spend Thanksgiving with Jasmine's family in Baltimore, when her phone chimed. Subject, Academic Appeal Decision, Urgent. Emma's hands went numb. She sat down hard on her bed and opened the email with trembling fingers. Dear Miss Bradley. Your academic appeal regarding the Nursing 401 final examination has been reviewed and denied. The university's examination policy is clear and applies equally to all students regardless of circumstance. Your decision to miss the scheduled exam, while perhaps well-intentioned, does not constitute grounds for accommodation. Furthermore, due to the resulting grade of F in Nursing 401, your cumulative GPA has fallen below the 3.5 minimum required for presidential scholarship recipients. Effective immediately, your scholarship has been terminated. Your student account now reflects an outstanding balance of $47,238 for the current academic year. This balance must be paid in full before you will be permitted to register for spring semester courses. Additionally, you will not be permitted to access university facilities, including the library and student center, until your account is settled. You have been scheduled for a mandatory meeting in my office on Monday, December 2nd at 10 a.m. to discuss your academic standing and future at Riverside University. Sincerely. Dean Patricia Morrison. Dean of Students. Riverside University. Emma read it twice. Then a third time. Each word felt like a physical blow, precise and devastating. $47,000. A mandatory meeting. Her academic standing and future at Riverside. They were going to expel her. The realization hit with crystal clarity. This wasn't just about one failed exam or one lost scholarship. They were building a case to remove her from the university entirely. The meeting on December 2nd wasn't a discussion, it was an execution. Emma's phone buzzed again. Jasmine calling. Hey, girl. You ready? My mom's making her sweet potato pie and she made extra for you, and my dad wants to know if you're still vegetarian or if, Emma. You there? Emma realized she was crying, silent tears streaming down her face, her breath coming in shallow gasps. What's wrong? Talk to me. They denied it, Emma managed. The appeal. They're taking everything. The scholarship, access to campus, everything. And Jazz. I think they're going to kick me out. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Jasmine's voice, hard as steel, pack your bag. I'm coming to get you. We're going to figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. It's over. It's not over until you say it's over. Pack your bag. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. Emma sat in the silence of her freezing apartment, the eviction notice on her door, that had arrived yesterday, another problem she couldn't solve, fluttering slightly in the draft from the broken window seal. Everything was falling apart. And she had no idea how to stop it. Jasmine's family lived in a row house in Baltimore's Reservoir Hill neighborhood, the kind of place where neighbors knew each other's names and kids still played outside until streetlights came on. Mrs. Patterson answered the door in an apron dusted with flour, pulling Emma into a hug before she'd even crossed the threshold. Baby girl, come in, come in. Jasmine told me what happened. Those people at that university ought to be ashamed of themselves. She held Emma at arm's length, studying her face with the practiced eye of a mother who'd raised 4 children. You look exhausted. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't ramen noodles? Mom, stop interrogating her, Jasmine said, grabbing Emma's bag and pulling her inside. The house smelled like cinnamon and roasting turkey, like warmth and safety and everything Emma's apartment wasn't. She just got here. But Mrs. Patterson was already heading to the kitchen. I'm making you a plate. And don't tell me you're not hungry, I can see your collarbones through that sweatshirt. Thanksgiving at the Patterson house was chaos in the best way. Jasmine's 3 brothers argued about football over dinner. Her father told terrible dad jokes that somehow still made everyone laugh. Her grandmother held court at the head of the table, dispensing wisdom and unsolicited advice in equal measure. And Emma, sitting between Jasmine and the youngest brother Trevor, felt her chest unclench for the first time in days. This was what family was supposed to feel like. After dinner, after the dishes were washed and the leftovers packed away, Jasmine dragged Emma up to her childhood bedroom, walls still covered with boy band posters from middle school and debate team trophies from high school. Okay, Jasmine said, sitting cross-legged on her bed and pulling out her laptop. Tell me everything. From the beginning. Emma did. She told her about Eleanor bleeding on the sidewalk, about the locked exam room door, about Professor Chen's sympathy and Dean Morrison's cold denial. About the email and the meeting scheduled for December 2nd. Jasmine listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. When Emma finished, Jasmine was quiet for a long moment, fingers flying across her keyboard. What are you doing? Emma asked. Research. Jasmine's eyes narrowed at the screen. Because something about this stinks, Em. I want to know if other students have been denied emergency accommodations. Professor Chen said Morrison doesn't lose appeals. Yeah, but has anyone else even tried? Jasmine clicked through pages, her journalism major training evident in the focused way she searched. And I want to know more about this Dean Morrison. Let me check the student forums. Emma lay back on the bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to Jasmine's ceiling. It doesn't matter. Even if other people got screwed too, that doesn't change my situation. I still failed. I still lost my scholarship. And I still can't pay $47,000. Have you called that Richardson guy back? Emma had forgotten about Victor Richardson's text. She pulled out her phone and scrolled back to find it. What's he going to do? Write me a check. Rich people don't actually help. They just make themselves feel better by saying they will. You don't know that. Jasmine glanced up from her screen. What if he wants to help? What if he has connections, or lawyers, or... Then he would have already done something. It's been 3 days. Emma closed her eyes. He probably just wanted to say thank you in person so he could post about it on social media. Good PR, you know. Billionaire grateful to heroic student. Gets him a nice headline. Her phone buzzed. Both girls jumped. Emma looked at the screen, another text from Victor Richardson's number. Miss Bradley, I understand you're dealing with difficulties related to saving Eleanor's life. I'd like to help if you'll let me. Are you available to speak tomorrow? I can come to you. Emma showed Jasmine the message. See? Jasmine grabbed Emma's phone. He wants to help. And he said he'll come to you. That's not normal rich person behavior, Em. That's actually promising. Or it's a photo op. Call him. Jasmine thrust the phone back at Emma. What do you have to lose at this point? Everything, Emma thought. She'd already lost everything. What was one more disappointment? She typed, I'm in Baltimore for Thanksgiving, but I'll be back Saturday evening. Sunday afternoon. The response came within 30 seconds, perfect. Send me your address. I'll be there at 2 p.m. And Emma? Thank you for saving my wife. You gave our family the greatest gift possible. Emma sent her address, that basement apartment with the broken heater and the eviction notice, then set her phone down with shaking hands. He's coming Sunday, she said. Jasmine hooped, loud enough that Trevor yelled up the stairs to shut up. This is good. This is really good. Maybe he'll. Don't, Emma interrupted. Don't get excited. Don't hope. I can't do hope right now, Jazz. Every time I let myself hope, it gets worse. Jasmine's face softened. She moved to sit beside Emma on the bed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. I know. But sometimes hope is all we've got. They sat like that for a while, two young women in a childhood bedroom decorated with remnants of simpler times, trying to figure out how to fight a system built to crush people like them. Finally, Jasmine spoke again, her voice thoughtful. You know what I keep thinking about? That woman, Eleanor. She was dying on that sidewalk, and everyone walked past her. Everyone except you. Yeah, and look where it got me. No, listen. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped. That's it. That's who you are. And now you need help. Jasmine squeezed her shoulder. So let people help you. Starting with this Richardson guy. Let him try. Emma wanted to argue. Wanted to say it wouldn't matter, that nothing would change, that the meeting on Monday would end with her leaving Riverside forever. But Trevor knocked on the door, interrupting her thoughts. Mom says to tell you she made up the guest room for Emma and also there's pie if you want it. We want it, Jasmine called back. Then to Emma, come on. Pie fixes everything temporarily. It didn't, of course. But sitting in the Patterson kitchen at midnight, eating sweet potato pie and listening to Mrs. Patterson tell stories about her own college struggles, Emma felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope, exactly. But maybe the possibility of hope. And right now, that was enough. Emma spent Saturday cleaning her apartment, which was a futile exercise given the water stains, the cracked linoleum, and the perpetual smell of mildew that no amount of bleach could eliminate. But Victor Richardson was coming tomorrow, and she couldn't let a billionaire see how she actually lived without at least trying to make it presentable. She was scrubbing the bathroom sink when someone knocked on her door. Emma checked the peephole, a habit born from living alone in a sketchy neighborhood, and saw a woman in a dark suit standing in the hallway. Professional. Put together. Definitely not from around here. Can I help you? Emma called through the door. Miss Bradley? My name is Catherine Wells. I'm with Richardson Technologies. Mr. Richardson sent me to deliver something. Emma opened the door a crack, keeping the chain lock engaged. The woman held up a credentials badge and a large envelope. Mr. Richardson wanted you to have this before your meeting tomorrow. May I come in for just a moment? Every instinct told Emma this was strange. Rich people didn't send assistants to basement apartments in bad neighborhoods. But she unlatched the chain and stepped aside. Catherine entered with practiced efficiency, her heels clicking on the cheap floor. She didn't react to the apartment's condition, no judgment, no pity, nothing. Just handed Emma the envelope. Mr. Richardson wanted you to review these materials before tomorrow's conversation. He thought it might be helpful context. Catherine pulled out a business card. If you have any questions or concerns before then, you can reach me at this number. Day or night. Emma took the card, too surprised to speak. One more thing. Catherine's expression softened slightly. What you did for Mrs. Richardson, the family is deeply grateful. More than you know. She paused at the door. See you tomorrow, Miss Bradley. Then she was gone, leaving Emma standing in her apartment holding an envelope that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Inside were 3 items, a printed news article, a legal document, and a handwritten note. The article was from the Metro Daily News, dated 5 days ago. Woman critical after downtown stabbing. Eleanor Richardson, 56, wife of tech billionaire Victor Richardson, remains in critical condition after being stabbed during an apparent robbery attempt near Riverside University campus. Police report that Richardson was walking alone when she was attacked by an unidentified assailant who fled with her purse. A passerby, identified only as a nursing student, provided emergency medical care at the scene until paramedics arrived. That student saved her life, said paramedic Andrea Jenkins. Another few minutes and we would have been too late. Richardson underwent emergency surgery at Metropolitan General and is expected to make a full recovery. Police are reviewing security footage and asking anyone with information to come forward. Emma's hands trembled. Stabbed. Eleanor had been stabbed. The article made it sound random, violent. Emma had assumed it was an accident, a fall, maybe, or some medical emergency. But this was attempted murder. And Emma had saved a woman someone tried to kill. The second document was a letter on university letterhead, not from Dean Morrison, but from the university president, Dr. Gerald Whitmore. It was addressed to Victor Richardson. Dear Mr. Richardson. On behalf of Riverside University, I want to extend our deepest sympathies regarding the attack on your wife. We are relieved to hear she is recovering. Regarding the student who assisted Mrs. Richardson, please be assured that we are addressing the matter of her academic standing with appropriate care and consideration. While university policy must be applied consistently, we appreciate the extraordinary circumstances and are reviewing all available options. I would welcome the opportunity to discuss this matter with you personally at your convenience. With sincere regards. Dr. Gerald Whitmore. President, Riverside University. The date was from 2 days ago. After Emma's appeal had been denied. So the university president knew about her situation. Knew that she'd saved Eleanor Richardson. And was apparently willing to discuss the matter with Victor Richardson while Dean Morrison had shut Emma down completely. The third item was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Emma. Eleanor woke up yesterday. The first thing she asked about was you, the young woman who saved her life. The doctors confirmed that without your intervention, she would not have survived. I'm not a man who believes in debts, but I believe in gratitude. And I believe in justice. What the university has done to you is neither just nor acceptable. Tomorrow, I'd like to discuss how we might fix this. Together. With deepest thanks. Victor Richardson. Emma read the note 3 times, then looked at the president's letter again. The pieces were starting to come together, forming a picture she didn't quite understand yet, but that made her pulse quicken with something that might have been anger or might have been hope or might have been both. The university had denied her appeal, threatened her with expulsion, and treated her like she'd done something wrong. But they were willing to review all available options when a billionaire came calling. Emma picked up her phone and pulled up Dean Morrison's email again, reading it with new eyes. The coldness. The immediate denial. The scheduled meeting that felt more like a sentencing. Then she opened a new text to Victor Richardson, "Thank you for the materials. I'll see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. And Mr. Richardson, I think we need to talk about more than just my situation." His response came quickly, "I was hoping you'd say that. See you tomorrow." Emma set down her phone and looked around her apartment, at the peeling paint, the broken heater, the eviction notice still taped to her door. At the life she'd built from nothing, the future she'd almost had. Dean Morrison thought this was over. The university thought they could make this go away quietly. They had no idea what was coming. And honestly, neither did Emma. But for the first time since that morning on the sidewalk, she felt something other than despair. She felt ready to fight. Victor Richardson arrived at exactly 2 p.m. in a black Mercedes that looked obscenely out of place on Emma Street, where most vehicles were held together by duct tape and prayer. He stepped out alone, no driver, no entourage, no security detail that Emma could see, wearing jeans and a simple sweater that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe but didn't scream wealth. He was tall, maybe late 50s, with graying hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd earned his billions rather than inherited them. When Emma opened the door, he extended his hand. "Emma Bradley. Thank you for meeting with me." His handshake was firm, genuine. Emma stepped aside to let him in, acutely aware of every crack in the walls, every stain on the carpet, every sign of the poverty she'd been trying to escape. If Victor noticed, he didn't show it. He simply sat in the folding chair she offered, the only chair besides the one at her card table, and looked at her with an intensity that was both unnerving and strangely reassuring. "How is Eleanor?" Emma asked, because she didn't know how else to start this conversation. "She's home now. Recovering well, thanks to you." Victor's voice caught slightly. "The doctors said you did everything right. The pressure you applied, keeping her conscious, recognizing the blood thinners, you gave her the time she needed." He paused. "My wife is alive because you sacrificed your exam. Your scholarship. Possibly your entire future." Emma looked down at her hands. "I just did what anyone should have done. But they didn't." Victor leaned forward. "I reviewed the security footage from that morning. 43 people walked past my wife while she was bleeding on that sidewalk. 43. Some of them looked right at her and kept walking." His jaw tightened. "You were the only one who stopped." The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications Emma wasn't ready to examine. "I read the letter from your university president," Emma said finally. "The one where he told you he's reviewing options. That's interesting, considering Dean Morrison denied my appeal 3 days ago and scheduled a meeting to discuss my academic standing, which I'm pretty sure means she's going to expel me." Victor's expression darkened. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." So Emma did. She told him about the exam, about Professor Chen's sympathy and Morrison's coldness, about the appeal that was denied before Thanksgiving. About the $47,000 balance and the meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. About the eviction notice on her door and the scholarship that was supposed to change her life. Victor listened without interrupting, his face growing progressively harder with each detail. When Emma finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call, putting it on speaker. "James. It's Victor. I need you." A man's voice answered, professional and alert despite it being Sunday afternoon. "What's the situation?" "I need you to pull every piece of documentation related to academic appeals at Riverside University for the past 5 years. Specifically emergency accommodation requests. I want to know how many were denied, how many were approved, and the demographic breakdown of both categories. There was a pause. You think there's a pattern? I know there's a pattern. Emma's not the first student they've done this to. She's just the first one with someone willing to fight back. Victor's eyes met Emma's. How fast can you get me that data? If their records are digitized. 24 hours. Maybe less. Do it. And James? I want everything. Email chains, meeting minutes, policy documents. Everything. You're going to war with a university. I'm going to war with injustice. The university just happens to be where it lives. Victor ended the call and looked at Emma. That was James Sullivan, my personal attorney. He's very good at finding things people try to hide. Emma's heart was pounding. What are you doing? What I should have done the moment I found out what they did to you. Victor stood, pacing the small apartment. Emma, let me ask you something. If this had happened to a white student, if some kid named Tyler or Brett had saved my wife's life and missed his exam, do you think Dean Morrison would have denied that appeal? The question hung in the air like smoke. Emma wanted to say yes. Wanted to believe that Morrison would have been equally harsh regardless of skin color. But she thought about the dean's office, about that pristine white suit and the way Morrison had looked at her. About the words she'd used. You people. No, Emma said quietly. I don't think she would have. Neither do I. Victor stopped pacing and faced her directly. Tomorrow morning, you have a meeting with Dean Morrison. I want to be there. She'll never allow that. She doesn't have a choice. This is your meeting, your academic future. You have the right to bring an advocate. His expression was steel. And I'm going to make sure she understands exactly what she's dealing with. Emma felt something shift in her chest, that dangerous thing she'd been trying to avoid. Hope. But this time it was different. This time it wasn't just wishful thinking. This time she had a billionaire on her side. There's something else, Victor said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. Eleanor wanted you to have this. Inside was a handwritten note on delicate stationery. Emma. I don't remember much from that morning, but I remember your voice telling me to stay awake. I remember your hand holding mine. I remember feeling safe. Thank you for my life. I'm going to make sure they don't take yours. With love and gratitude. Eleanor. Emma's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of this man who was offering her something she'd been denied since the moment her mother died, someone who gave a damn. So what do we do? She asked. Victor smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who'd built an empire and knew exactly how to dismantle one. We show them what happens when they mistake kindness for weakness, he said. Starting tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Emma didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed watching her phone clock tick from 11:47 to 11:48 to 11:49, her mind racing through every possible scenario for tomorrow's meeting. At 3 a.m., she gave up and made instant coffee with lukewarm water because the kettle was broken, reviewing her notes and documentation by the glow of her laptop screen. At 6 a.m., her phone rang. Victor Richardson. Did you sleep? He asked without preamble. No. You. No. James sent the data an hour ago. Emma, it's worse than I thought. His voice was tight with controlled rage. In the past 5 years, Riverside has denied emergency accommodation requests to 52 students. 43 of them were students of color. That's 83%. Emma's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. And the white students? Of the 9 white students denied, 6 successfully appealed. Of the 43 students of color denied, only 2 appeals were successful, both of them athletes with significant media presence. Victor paused. James also found email chains between Dean Morrison and other administrators. I'm forwarding them to you now. Read them before the meeting. The emails appeared in Emma's inbox seconds later. She opened the first one, dated 8 months ago. From Patricia Morrison. To Academic Standards Committee. Accommodation request, student number 847392. This is the third request this semester from this particular student. I'm beginning to see a pattern of students from certain backgrounds using family emergencies as excuses for poor time management. We need to be more rigorous in our verification process, particularly with scholarship students who may not have the same commitment to academic excellence as their peers. Emma's hands shook as she scrolled to the next email, this one from 3 months ago. From Patricia Morrison. To Dr. Gregory Walsh. Makeup exam request. Greg, regarding the Walsh boys' request, of course we can arrange a makeup. His father sits on the board, and I think we both understand that some flexibility is warranted for families who have invested so much in this institution. Let's schedule it quietly. The Walsh boy. Not a student name, not even a first name. Just, the Walsh boy, whose father's position bought him flexibility that 43 other students couldn't access. Emma read through 15 more emails, each one worse than the last. A pattern emerged: white students received consideration and understanding. Students of color received policy is policy and personal responsibility. Her phone rang again. Victor. Tell me you read them, he said. I read them. James is compiling them into a formal report. We'll have it ready before the meeting. There was a pause. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you want to stay at Riverside? After everything they've done, after what we're about to expose, do you actually want to stay there? Emma looked around her apartment, at the life she'd built on hope and determination and her mother's dying wish. She thought about Professor Chen, about the clinical rotations she'd excelled in, about the dream of becoming a nurse that had sustained her through poverty and grief and endless night shifts at minimum-wage jobs. Yes, she said. I want to stay. I want my scholarship back. I want to graduate. And I want them to know they can't do this to anyone else. Good. Victor's voice held grim satisfaction. Then let's make sure they never forget what happens when they mistake compassion for weakness. I'll pick you up at 9:30. Dean Patricia Morrison's office looked exactly as Emma remembered, spacious, intimidating, designed to make students feel small. Morrison sat behind her massive mahogany desk in another designer suit, pale blue this time, her expression one of barely concealed irritation when Emma walked in at precisely 10 a.m. That irritation turned to shock when Victor Richardson walked in behind her. What is this? Morrison stood abruptly. Mr. Richardson, this is a private academic meeting. Miss Bradley has the right to an advocate present, Victor said smoothly, settling into one of the leather chairs without waiting for an invitation. I'm here in that capacity. This is highly irregular. So is denying emergency accommodation requests based on race. Victor pulled a folder from his briefcase and placed it on Morrison's desk. But we can discuss that in a moment. Please, continue with your meeting. We wouldn't want to disrupt your process. Morrison's face had gone pale. She looked at the folder like it might explode, then at Emma, then back to Victor. I don't know what you think you know. I know you've systematically denied accommodations to students of color at a rate of 83% while approving accommodations for white students with far less compelling circumstances. Victor's voice was pleasant, conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. I know you've exchanged emails describing scholarship students as lacking commitment to academic excellence. I know you arranged a quiet makeup exam for board member Walsh's son while simultaneously denying Emma's documented life-saving emergency. Those emails are confidential university communications, which will be part of a formal Title VI complaint we're filing with the Department of Education this afternoon. Victor leaned back in his chair. Along with a press release, a full-page ad in the Metro Daily News, and a lawsuit for discrimination, emotional distress, and retaliation. Unless, of course, we can reach an understanding here today. The silence in the office was absolute. Morrison's hands gripped the edge of her desk, knuckles white. "What do you want?" Victor smiled. "I want you to tell Emma why you really denied her appeal. And this time, I want the truth." Emma watched Morrison's face cycle through emotions, anger, fear, calculation. She'd seen that look before, in her mother's eyes when bill collectors called. The look of someone trapped with no good options. Finally, Morrison spoke, her voice tight. "Fine. You want the truth. The truth is that students like Emma, students from her background, they don't usually finish anyway. Reinstating her scholarship, giving her special treatment, it would just delay the inevitable." There it was. The ugly truth Emma had always suspected but never heard spoken aloud. Victor pulled out his phone. "Say that again. For the record this time." Morrison's face went from pale to crimson. "You recorded, you can't." "Actually, I can. Maryland is a one-party consent state." Victor stood. "Here's what's going to happen next, Dean Morrison. You're going to reinstate Emma's scholarship. You're going to expunge the F from her record and arrange a makeup exam. And you're going to implement a new policy for emergency accommodations that applies equally to all students, regardless of race or economic background. And if I refuse? Then tomorrow morning, every news outlet in the state will have copies of your emails, the discrimination data, and this recording. By noon, you'll be trending on social media. By evening, the university will be facing federal investigation and multiple lawsuits." Victor's expression was steel. "Your choice, Dean Morrison. Make it now." Dean Morrison's office felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Emma watched the dean's face contort through rapid calculations, pride versus self-preservation, power versus consequences. For a long moment, the only sound was the antique clock ticking behind Morrison's head, each second marking another opportunity for the dean to make the right choice. Finally, Morrison spoke, her voice controlled but brittle. "You think you've won. You think walking in here with money and lawyers and threats means you can dictate policy to this university. I think," Victor said quietly, "that you've been getting away with discrimination for years because the students you targeted didn't have the resources to fight back. Emma does now. So yes, I think we've won." Morrison's laugh was harsh, bitter. "You have no idea what you're stepping into. This isn't about one student or one exam. This is about maintaining standards." "Standards?" Emma's voice cut through the room, surprising even herself with its strength. She'd been silent until now, letting Victor lead, but something inside her snapped. "You want to talk about standards? My mother died because she couldn't afford insulin. She worked 60-hour weeks as a home health aide, taking care of other people's parents while her own health fell apart. And you know what her last words to me were? Be better than this system. Help people." Emma stood, her hands steady despite the rage coursing through her. "So I became a nursing student. I maintained a 4.0 GPA while working 3 jobs. I volunteered at free clinics every weekend. I did everything right. And then I saved a woman's life, did exactly what my mother taught me, exactly what this university supposedly trained me to do, and you threw me away like trash." Morrison opened her mouth, but Emma wasn't finished. "You talk about standards. You don't have standards. You have prejudice dressed up in policy language. You have a system designed to keep people like me out, and when we manage to get in anyway, you look for any excuse to push us back out." Emma's voice was shaking now, but not with fear. With fury. With years of swallowed indignities rising to the surface. "Well, I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not letting you do this to anyone else." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Morrison's desk phone rang, shrill and insistent. She ignored it. It rang again. And again. You should probably answer that, Victor said mildly. Morrison snatched up the receiver. I said no interruptions. Her face changed. Dr. Whitmore. Yes, sir. Yes, they're both here now. A long pause. I understand. Yes, sir. Right away. She hung up, her hand trembling slightly. When she looked at Emma and Victor, something had shifted in her expression, fear, barely masked. President Whitmore would like to see all of us in his office. Immediately. The walk across campus to the administration building felt surreal. Students passed them, laughing and complaining about finals, completely unaware that Emma's entire future hung in the balance. Victor walked beside her, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low tones to his attorney James. Morrison walked 3 steps ahead, her spine rigid, designer heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown. President Whitmore's office was twice the size of Morrison's, with dark wood paneling and portraits of past presidents lining the walls. Dr. Gerald Whitmore himself was a silver-haired man in his 60s, with the practiced smile of someone who'd spent decades in academic politics. That smile was nowhere in evidence when they entered. Sit down, he said, gesturing to the chairs arranged in front of his desk. His tone was clipped, professional, and utterly without warmth. They sat. Morrison looked like she might be sick. Mr. Richardson, Whitmore began, I received a very interesting phone call 20 minutes ago from our legal counsel. They've been made aware of certain allegations regarding discriminatory practices in our accommodation policies. Not allegations, Victor corrected. Facts. Documented, verifiable facts. Whitmore's jaw tightened. Be that as it may, I want to assure you that Riverside University takes such matters extremely seriously. We pride ourselves on our commitment to diversity and inclusion. Do you? Emma heard herself interrupt. Both men looked at her in surprise. Because I'm looking at portraits of 14 past presidents on your walls, Dr. Whitmore. 14 white men. And I'm sitting here after being told by your dean of students that people from my background don't usually finish anyway. So forgive me if I'm skeptical about your commitment. Whitmore had the grace to look uncomfortable. Miss Bradley, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm devastated. There's a difference. Emma pulled out her phone, opening the photos she'd saved last night. This is my mother, Dr. Whitmore. Veronica Bradley. She died when I was 16 because she chose my future over her health. She worked herself to death so I could have opportunities she never had. And when I finally got here, when I finally had a chance to honor her sacrifice, your dean threw it away because I chose to save someone's life. She showed him the photo, her mother in her aide uniform, smiling despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Whitmore studied the image for a long moment. When he looked up, something in his expression had softened. Your mother would be proud of what you did. Then give me the chance to make her prouder. Emma's voice cracked. Let me finish what I started. Let me become the nurse she believed I could be. The office fell silent except for the ticking of another antique clock, apparently required equipment for university administrators. Finally, Whitmore turned to Morrison. Dean Morrison, you're suspended pending a full investigation into the accommodation policies and practices in your office. Effective immediately. Morrison's face went white. Dr. Whitmore, you can't. I can and I am. This university's reputation is at stake. More importantly, our values are at stake. He turned to Emma. Miss Bradley, your scholarship will be fully reinstated. Your nursing 401 grade will be changed to incomplete, and Professor Chen will administer a makeup exam at your earliest convenience. Additionally, the university will cover your housing costs for the remainder of the academic year and provide a formal letter of apology. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back, refusing to cry in front of these people. Furthermore, Whitmore continued, I'm forming a task force to review all accommodation denials from the past 5 years and implementing a new transparent appeals process with third-party oversight. Mr. Richardson, I hope this demonstrates our commitment to making this right. Victor stood, extending his hand. It's a start, Dr. Whitmore. But we'll be watching to ensure these promises become actions. As they left the building, stepping into the cold December air, Emma finally let herself breathe. Really breathe, for the first time in weeks. We did it, she whispered. Victor smiled. No, Emma. You did it. I just made sure people listened. But Emma knew the truth. She'd saved Eleanor's life on that sidewalk, yes. But today, in that office, they'd saved something bigger. They'd saved her future. And maybe, just maybe, they'd saved it for others too. 3 months later, Emma stood in the parking lot of her apartment building, her former apartment building, watching the moving truck pull away with the last of her belongings. It wasn't much, some clothes, her textbooks, her mother's photo in its thrift store frame. Everything she owned fit in the back of Jasmine's Honda Civic with room to spare. You ready? Jasmine asked, keys dangling from her fingers. Emma took one last look at the basement window, at the cracked concrete steps she'd climbed every day for 2 years, at the place that had sheltered her through the worst period of her life. She didn't feel nostalgic. She felt victorious. Yeah, she said. I'm ready. The new apartment was in a different neighborhood entirely, still modest, still affordable on her reinstated scholarship stipend, but with heat that worked and windows that didn't leak and a landlord who actually answered maintenance calls. Eleanor Richardson had helped her find it, had insisted on co-signing the lease when Emma's credit history proved too thin. You saved my life, Eleanor had said when Emma protested the help. Let me save you a little back. That had been 6 weeks ago, at the coffee shop meeting where Eleanor and Emma had finally sat down together, both of them whole and healthy, and talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing. Eleanor had cried when Emma told her about her mother. Emma had cried when Eleanor described waking up in the hospital and learning what Emma had sacrificed. I'm going to make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else, Eleanor had promised. Victor and I are establishing a scholarship fund, the Compassionate Action Scholarship. For students who face academic consequences for helping others in emergencies. And she had. The fund launched in January with an endowment of $5 million. Emma had been the first recipient, but 3 other students had already qualified, a pre-med student who'd missed an exam to perform CPR on a subway, a chemistry major who'd been penalized for leaving class to help during a campus shooting lockdown, and an engineering student who'd failed a final after staying up all night helping search for a missing child. The stories kept coming. And the Richardson Foundation kept helping. But that wasn't the only change. Dean Patricia Morrison had been quietly dismissed in January after the investigation uncovered not just discriminatory accommodation policies, but also evidence of grade manipulation favoring wealthy donors' children and misappropriation of scholarship funds. The local news had covered it extensively. The student newspaper had published a scathing exposé. Morrison's carefully constructed image had crumbled in a matter of weeks. Professor Chen had been named interim dean of students. Her first act was implementing the new accommodation policy, transparent, equitable, with a 3-person review board that included student representation. Her second act was personally overseeing Emma's makeup exam. Emma had passed with a 94%. Now it was March, and Emma was halfway through her spring semester, her GPA restored to 3.87, her future secure. But more than that, she'd become something unexpected, a voice. The story had gone viral, not immediately, but steadily, building momentum as news outlets picked it up, as social media amplified it, as other students came forward with their own stories of discrimination disguised as policy. Emma's face appeared in newspapers, on websites, in YouTube videos discussing systemic racism in higher education. She'd been invited to speak at an education reform conference. Then another. Then a panel discussion on CNN. Tell me how it felt, the host had asked, when Dean Morrison denied your appeal. Emma had looked directly into the camera. It felt like the system was working exactly as designed. To keep people like me out. To punish compassion. To make sure that wealth and privilege determined who got second chances and who got destroyed. The clip had been viewed 4 million times. Now, driving through the city with Jasmine toward her new apartment, Emma's phone buzzed. A text from Victor: Eleanor and I are hosting a small celebration dinner tonight for the scholarship recipients. Say yes before you make excuses about studying. Emma smiled and typed back, what time? 6 p.m. Catherine will pick you up. Victor? Jasmine asked, glancing over. Dinner with the scholarship recipients. Emma hesitated. You want to come? I'm sure they wouldn't mind. Girl, no. This is your thing. Your community. Jasmine reached over and squeezed her hand. I'm just glad you found people who see you for who you are. The dinner was at the Richardsons' home, a sprawling estate that made Emma feel simultaneously uncomfortable and grateful. Eleanor met her at the door with a hug that had become familiar over the past months, no longer the hug of a grateful patient but of something closer to family. Emma. Come in, come in. The others are in the dining room. The 4 scholarship recipients sat around a table laden with food that smelled incredible, swapping stories, laughing, comparing notes on their school's attempts at damage control. Emma slid into an empty chair between a girl named Tasha, the pre-med student, and a guy named Jordan, the engineering major. So you're the one who started all this, Jordan said, grinning. The legend herself. I just helped someone, Emma protested. You all did the same thing. Yeah, but you fought back. Tasha raised her glass. To Emma Bradley, who taught us that compassion isn't weakness and that systems can change if you're brave enough to break them. They clinked glasses, sparkling cider for Emma, who had early clinical rounds tomorrow, and Emma felt something warm bloom in her chest. Not just gratitude, though there was that. Not just relief, though she felt that too. Purpose. This was what her mother had meant. Be better than this system. Help people. Emma was helping. Not just by saving Eleanor's life on that sidewalk, but by refusing to let that act of compassion be turned into punishment. By fighting back. By being loud about injustice instead of quiet about suffering. After dinner, Eleanor pulled Emma aside onto the terrace overlooking the garden. I have something for you, Eleanor said, handing her an envelope. Inside was a letter, acceptance to the graduate nursing program at Riverside, with a full fellowship funded by the Richardson Foundation. Emma's hands shook. Eleanor, I haven't even applied yet. Victor made some calls. The program director reviewed your undergraduate record and your clinical evaluations. You're exactly what they're looking for. Eleanor's eyes were bright. Plus, they figured accepting you would be good PR after everything that happened. Emma laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep and genuine. Probably true. There's something else. Eleanor pulled out a second envelope. We're proposing federal legislation, the Student Good Samaritan Act. It would require universities receiving federal funding to have transparent, non-discriminatory policies for emergency accommodations. Senator Williams is sponsoring it. Emma stared at the bill's summary, at the words that could change everything for students nationwide. This is because of you, Eleanor said softly. What happened to you was wrong. But what you did with it, turning your pain into policy, your experience into action, that's extraordinary. Emma thought about her mother then, about that promise made in an ICU room 3 years ago. I'm going to be a nurse, Mama. I'm going to help people. She'd thought that meant bedside care, medication administration, wound dressing. And it would mean those things. But it also meant this, advocacy. Reform. Fighting so the next black girl from a poor neighborhood who stopped to help someone wouldn't have to fight as hard as Emma had. Thank you, Emma said, and the words felt inadequate for everything she meant. Thank you for living. Thank you for fighting with me. Thank you for seeing me. Eleanor hugged her. No, Emma. Thank you. For reminding us that character matters more than policy. That compassion matters more than convenience. That one person willing to stop can change everything. 4 years later. Emma Bradley, RN, MSN, adjusted her name badge as she walked through the halls of Metropolitan General Hospital, the same hospital where Eleanor had been taken that November morning, where Emma's mother had died years before that. But now Emma walked these halls not as a frightened teenager or a desperate student, but as a nurse practitioner specializing in community health. Her office wall held several frames, her nursing degree, her master's degree, a newspaper clipping about the Student Good Samaritan Act passing into law, and a photo of her mother. But the newest addition was a plaque. Emma Bradley Community Nursing Clinic. Funded by the Richardson Foundation. Providing free healthcare to underserved populations. Be better than the system. Help people. Veronica Bradley. The clinic would open next month. Emma would oversee it, along with a team of nurses and volunteer medical students. They would provide the care her mother never received. They would catch the people falling through the cracks. Her phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor, saw the clinic sign went up. Veronica would be so proud. I know I am. Emma looked at her mother's photo, at that tired smile and those determined eyes, and felt the weight of the promise she'd made finally settle into something like peace. She'd become a nurse. She'd helped people, not just with medical care, but by fighting to change a system that punished compassion. She'd turned a moment of choice on a bloody sidewalk into a movement that protected students nationwide. And she'd done it all while refusing to let anyone make her small, make her silent, make her disappear. Dean Morrison had tried to throw her away like trash. Instead, Emma had become exactly what her mother knew she could be, someone who changed the world. Not despite the obstacles, but because of them. Emma smiled, grabbed her stethoscope, and headed toward the exam rooms. She had patients to see. People to help. A promise to keep. Emma's story shows us that doing the right thing often comes with a cost, but also that fighting back against injustice can create change far beyond ourselves. Have you or someone you know ever been punished for helping others? What would you have done in Emma's position when faced with the choice between the exam and saving a life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else facing a similar crossroads.
From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for tuning in and watching this video. You being here is the best encouragement I could ask for. The simplest and best way to show your support and tell me you want to see more content is to like this video and subscribe to the channel. That's your way of sending me love. I don't want the adventure to stop yet though. To enjoy more thrilling videos, go ahead and click the next video thumbnail you see right now. Enjoy and thanks again.